Story. In some ways, we all work for Jared Kushner now, but Elizabeth Spiers was one of the first to actually do so. As the former editor-in-chief of the New York Observer, she worked for Kushner in the early part of this decade, and she recently wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post titled, "I work for Jared Kushner. He is the wrong businessman to reinvent government." Welcome, Elizabeth. I tend to say I agree with you. It was just announced yesterday, in fact, that you're now raising money for a startup that is meant to be, some have called it the Breitbart of the left. Is there any truth there?
Yeah, it's an adversarial lefty news organization, and so I understand the Breitbart comparison in the sense that it would be opinionated and unabashedly partisan. It's not like Breitbart in the sense that we're not publishing fake news, and there are no white supremacists in our constituency.
I'm glad to hear that. Did it come out of the Trump presidency, or were you planning this before November?
I think it was it was in the back of my head before, but the election really solidified it for me. I think like a lot of people, I woke up every morning just kind of flabbergasted at what had happened, and it began overwhelming kind of everything else that I was paying attention to. And so at some point I just thought, what do I have in my arsenal that would make a difference? And this was what I thought of. So, for
people my age, you've had one of the most extraordinary careers in publishing. Started at Gawker, went through the Observer, and now you're starting your own thing, which is incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You probably never assumed when you worked at the Observer in 2011 and 12 that you were working for somebody who would be the most powerful person in the free world. Can you tell me your original impression of Jared Kushner?
I mean, I actually met Jared 2 weeks after he bought the Observer. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and I had started a small blog network at the time that had a Wall Street site. And we met because I thought maybe the two publications could do a partnership. And so to say that he was a little green when I met him, he'd been the owner for all of 2 weeks.
Right.
So my first impressions of him were that he was enthusiastic about the paper, which I think anybody would be if you just bought one.
One would hope.
Had no publishing experience, and I think he was just sort of trying to feel out how media worked because he was, I want to say, 26 at the time. So
did he admire journalists? Did he understand the craft of journalism, of pooling sources, putting things together?
No. I mean, he didn't really understand anything about the journalistic process, and I don't think that's why he bought the paper. It wasn't about developing an interest in journalism or a belief in the First Amendment. It was the fact that the New York Observer stood for a very specific thing, and it was a small but influential kind of prestige paper in New York, and so it catered to people that I think Jared wanted to know and influence, and that was the primary motivation. So.
Part of the narrative of Kushner's time at the Observer is colored by the stories of him trying to become friendly with the staff. You were contemporaries, basically. I mean, you're in fact, you may even be a little older than Jared. Did he seem like somebody who wanted to fit in? Did he seem self-confident? You saw him go through being a single guy, being married to Ivanka Trump, to being a family guy. Did you sense a sort of progression of his ambition as well?
Yeah, I think by the time I got there, he'd owned the paper for 5 years. So we would meet once a week in Kushner co-offices. He wasn't really in the Observer that much, and so he had pretty limited interaction with the staff. We would talk almost every day, but for the most part, he was very involved in running the family business, and that was his first priority.
Thanks for watching Cheddar on YouTube. For more clips of CEO and startup interviews, click one of the videos right here, or subscribe to us to get our live alerts right here